After those dramatic scenes at that crowded migrant camp under a border bridge in Del Rio, tonight, U.S. officials telling NBC News the Biden administration is preparing for an even more massive surge in October. Up to 400,000 migrants crossing the border, which would be a record, nearly doubling the stunning numbers we've seen the last 2 months, which were a 21-year high. The new surge likely, officials say, because of a court order due to start tomorrow lifting a COVID restriction known as Title 42, which had allowed officials to quickly deport most asylum seekers during the pandemic. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas saying keeping Title 42 is critical.
That is an authority that the Centers for Disease Control has determined to still be necessary given where we are in the arc of the pandemic.
In Del Rio, border authorities were taken by surprise by a surge of mostly Haitian migrants who came from South America. 5,000 were deported back to Haiti, but the administration released most into the U.S., around 13,000, asking them to report to an immigration center to start asylum hearings. Tonight, immigration advocates say it's time to end Title 42.
It's blatantly illegal under both U.S. and international law and has caused enormous harm to hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration is trying again to end the Trump-era Remain in Mexico policy. Critics say it kept asylum seekers waiting in very poor conditions in Mexico for U.S. court dates. Supporters say it deterred migrant surges.
Hello, welcome to the BL News. I'm Tina Sofos. As the Biden administration is expelling Haitian illegal immigrants back to their chaotic country, thousands of others are making their way to the United States border through hostile jungles. Newsmax, citing Panamanian government sources, reported that up to 4,000 migrants, most of them Haitians, have passed through the jungles of the Darien Gap in Panama on the Colombian border to approach the United States border. One source said that around 4,000 migrants passed through migration reception stations in Panama. The group includes Cubans and other nationalities. Meanwhile, some 16,000 migrants are stuck in the town of Necoclí in North Colombia, awaiting transport to the Darien Gap. From there, smugglers will guide them through one of the most dangerous and impassable regions of Latin America. Colombia and Panama last month agreed to let 500 migrants cross per day. However, local officials are urging them to raise the quota and keep pace with up to 1,500 migrants who arrive daily. During the United Nations General Assembly on Thursday, September 23rd, Panamanian President Laurentino Cortizo called for assistance from the international community. His country is spending its limited budget on migrant care. Cortizo revealed that more than 80,000 irregular migrants have travelled through Panama this year. The country received an average of 800 migrants in January to 30,000 in August. The new wave of Haitian migrants fleeing economic, political and social chaos in their homeland further complicates the border crisis that Biden administration must address. On Friday, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said that his department has already sent nearly 2,000 migrants back to Haiti on 17 flights. In addition, an estimated 8,000 migrants have returned to Mexico voluntarily. Mayorkas said more than 12,400 migrants would have their cases heard by an immigration judge to decide whether they would be removed or permitted to remain in the United States.
As hundreds of thousands of people cross a large part of the American continent in an attempt to reach the United States, we take a look at the situation in Colombia with our correspondent Hanan Tabar.
The boat sailed from the municipality of Necoclí, Antioquia, in an hour and 40-minute trip, arriving at a point known as Santa Lucia, going through part of the Caribbean Sea in the Gulf of Urubá. We arrived at a point where people waited for their travel supplies. There, we continued by land in horse-drawn carriages or motorcycles, going through the almost inaccessible road further into Colombian Choco.
To transport these people here on these roads, which are quite rough and are always dangerous when it rains, and when it rains, it gets so bad that some of them suffer. So, we always try to help them to get to where they are going, or try and help them to get there safely.
Some road sections must be done by foot because of their poor condition, a risk for some of the asylum seekers. This is one of the most difficult roads that around 500 people cross daily, some in horse-drawn carriages, others pay between $30 and $40 for a motorcycle ride to take them to Los Teques, a few minutes up the road, where they spend the night and continue their journey to the border with Panama. After approximately 2 hours, they arrive at a location controlled by the illegal armed groups where the people spend the night, paying $100 each. In this camp, they rest, eat, set up their tents, and plan the rest of the journey.
Making a decision like this has not been easy. You have to be strong to do this. Even though we did not face the most difficult part, we know what to expect, to cross the jungle, also known as the Darien or Jungle of Death. It's difficult, but we still have the faith that we can do it, that God will help us cross and we will arrive to our destiny.
People arrive here along with their families, after waiting for more than 20 days for a ticket to Necoclí, Antioquia. They are aware of the risk and rumors about the journey that awaits them. They say they are afraid but want to reach the so-called American dream.
There are people who say that in Panama there are places like this. Others say there are people who sometimes steal your belongings and sometimes rape the women.
Despite the hardships, men, women, and children are determined to reach the North American countries, with the idea of changing their lives and helping the rest of the family that stayed behind. So they continue their journey through the jungles that connect Colombia with Panama.
Hernandario Tobar Telesur, Acandí, Departamento del Chocó, Colombia.
Here in these tents, they spend 2 or 3 weeks waiting to board a boat that will take them to the city of Acandí in that direction, where they will start a long journey to cross one of the most deadly and impenetrable jungle on the planet, the Darien Gap that connects Colombia to Panama. The authorities in the city of Necoclí here, they say they recognize there are at least 20,000 people stuck here, most of them Haitian. And the reason is that the authorities of Colombia and Panama decided that they will allow only 500 people to cross every day. The town here is starting to look like an Haitian town, as the locals are leaving their homes, renting them day by day to the Haitians, which is a good business for them. On the other side, the migrants are spending almost all the money they saved, and they are still 5 countries away from United States. Most of the people that are here in this moment, they come from Chile or Brazil, where the COVID crisis destroyed their fragile lives that they built as migrants in those countries. When we talked to them a few minutes ago, asking them why are they willing to risk their lives to cross the jungle and to reach the United States, they say that they have no other choices. There are no other options. They cannot go back to a country where the president was killed back in July and is in complete chaos. And as well, their families back there, the only income they have is the money that these people are sending them.
Panama Foreign Minister Erica Moines, on Wednesday, September 29th, said the influx of illegal migrants at the U.S. border has far from ended. While the U.S. was feeling some relief from dealing with about 30,000 illegal migrants of mostly Haitian nationals appearing on the U.S. border in recent weeks, Moines broke the news that the issue was far from being subdued. She said in an interview with Axios, "We sounded the alarm when we should have. Earlier this month, her administration had informed the White House about the most recent migration wave, which resulted in nearly 15,000 individuals gathered under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas," Moines told the outlet. The sudden migrant cramp under the international bridge in Del Rio was considered under control last Friday, August 24th. But the Panama minister was not optimistic about what to expect in the future. According to the minister, since January, her country has encountered more than 85,000 migrants, and all were aiming for the U.S., with a majority of them being Haitians. While some 15,000 Haitians were flown back to their country, Moines anticipated more than 60,000 others were still on their way to the U.S., urging a quick preparation. We've engaged with every single authority that we can think of, that we can come across, to say, please, let's pay attention to this, she said, calling for the U.S. to work with other countries to respond to the issue. She stated, we all have a role to play in this issue, and the regional approach is the correct approach. It is impossible for Panama to solve it on its own. Haitians were leaving their country over a series of plights, from political instability after their president's assassination, destructive earthquakes, gang crimes, hunger, and poverty. Panama has begun a migrant quota system in collaboration with its two closest neighbors, Colombia and Costa Rica, Moines told Axios. She stressed that other South American countries need to implement similar methods to keep migrant numbers under control. A chaotic illegal migrant situation would make it harder for officials to manage criminals and smugglers crossing the U.S. between asylum seekers. It would be no less challenging to ensure acceptable quality for those being kept in custody. Illegal migrants are not screened for COVID-19 either unless they show symptoms. The Border Patrol said it could not afford time and space to conduct such a procedure at crowded processing stations. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, said that outside of those being deported back to Haiti, some 8,000 had returned, voluntarily, to Mexico. At the same time, another 4,000 were being processed for deportation or removal by DHS, according to the New York Post. DHS Chief Alejandro Mayorkas announced earlier this week that an immigration judge would consider the cases of 13,000 Haitian migrants from the latest surge, 10,000 of whom had been allowed to enter the U.S.
We begin in Mexico, where the arrival of thousands of Haitian asylum seekers has put the authorities on alert. Meanwhile, sectors of the population have mobilized to support those arriving with food and basic necessities. More details in the following report by our correspondent, Eduardo Martinez.
The coffee house, La Resistencia, located in the historic center of Mexico City, has become a place to collect basic necessities to support Haitian families who have arrived in the center of the country. Everyone wants a better life. It can be in Mexico, it can be in the United States. I am not against someone looking for something better for themselves or their family. Mariana Najon is in charge of sorting the aid gathered in the last 5 days, as well as channeling it directly to those who come to request it or sending it to where it is most needed.
It has been untimely but also enriching to be able to share a little of what we have and be aware that we are privileged. We have a home, a job that may or may not give much or little. We have stability and security.
The migratory crisis, sparked by the arrival of thousands of Haitians, mostly from Chile and Brazil, has overwhelmed the capacity of shelters operating in the city, as well as the authorities at the border, who have to deal with thousands of requests.
The idea is to free up spaces for new arrivals, a demand that was there for the Commission that due to the saturation of the appointment system, new arrivals were unable to get an appointment.
2,000 foreigners are assisted daily, including thousands of Central Americans. In Tapachula, Chiapas, a stadium has been set up as a shelter. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador called on the international community to turn its attention to Haiti. An international aid commission should intervene. The UN should also intervene because the situation is very serious. In view of the strengthening of immigration policies in the United States, thousands of asylum seekers are moving through Mexican territory, some waiting at the northern border, while others return to the center and south of the country to go to the immigration authorities and obtain a document that will allow them to stay temporarily.
Eduardo Martinez, Telesur, Ciudad de México.
The money food chain for the cartels, you got guns, drugs, currency, human smuggling. What's the order?
Human smuggling right now is their biggest commodity. They're making millions and millions of dollars a month off of human smuggling because it's a less risk for them as far as moving narcotics.
Welcome to what has become a routine traffic stop in South Texas on a Sunday afternoon. Forget a broken taillight. You've got 4 people who each paid $25,000 for a VIP smuggling trip into the United States. It feels like the cartel's almost one step ahead of you guys and of the administration.
They are, because they know the loopholes, they know how to exploit them.
This is the path that illegal immigrants walk on from the Rio Grande a half a mile that way here into America. The Border Patrol's given up on stopping them or capturing them, but they have erected these conveniently located signs to let folks know to keep walking about another half a mile so they can simply be processed. But why is it that people walking across is something you just can't even bother to deal with?
Because of the policies that are in place for now. The policies in place for now makes it easier for these illegal immigrants to come across with no resistance, and that's why they're doing it. And as the message gets sent to their home countries, more people are going to continue to come. That's what we're seeing day in and day out.
Runners are different than raft people. How?
If they're trying to come across and not be caught, they're either moving some type of product or a high-value individual or guns, drugs.
Holy cow, there's like 30 people. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15. We'll give you the state of play right now. That's the Border Patrol drone. You can see a couple of the flashlights. Those are the state troopers yelling, they found somebody or somebodies. $7,000 to bring you from El Salvador to here.
Yeah.
This area right here is a very, very high violent area on the Mexico side. A lot of cartel infighting, report after report every night of machine gun fire. There's a lot of cartel overlap here, and that's the reason why they're fighting.
A lot of cartel overlap, and they overlap here because of how valuable this ground is for smuggling.
Absolutely.
This video sounds like a firefight in Syria right now, and it was recorded at that house.
From that house, yeah.
And that's the cartels fighting. Those aren't handguns.
No, not really.
That's heavy weapons.
Yeah, that's heavy weapons.
It's a little different, you know. Jesse James had a 6-shooter, and now the cartel has RPGs. There's obviously been a lot of discussion about walls. The wall you're seeing right here is privately built, and the troopers out on the water tell me this is one part of the river they don't have to patrol, hence why we can go fast through it. So the technology that the cartels have is as good as the technology that you guys have or close.
Yeah, I would say.
It's kind of scary.
It is.
And you realize that they probably have the same kind of weapons that you guys do.
Yes.
We're in one of the most deserted parts of the Rio Grande, and we've stopped on the Texas Highway Patrol boat. You can see this is a trough, a drainage ditch that the coyotes have taken over to bring down either people or drugs or guns. They can come right across the river here, and then they've made this trail to head right up into Texas. These wristbands are given out by the cartels to the people they're smuggling across. Each color and each different design, much like a nightclub, represents a different cartel and a different service that the people being smuggled have bought.
Right, so ever since this crisis started back in January, Border Patrol has been pulled from the field, keeping them from doing their normal duties, which being out there on the field, deterring any criminal activity, arresting or apprehending illegal immigrants that are coming across, but they're not. They're stuck in processing centers. So now the state of Texas is having to fill those gaps with the resources that we have, state resources.
You're fighting an army that's sophisticated.
Exactly.
They've got intelligence.
Yeah, they have surveillance, they have counter-surveillance, technology, tactics, just exactly what we do, the way we train. They're trained the exact same way.
You have to assume that they know where you guys are, both in the air and then on the ground, right?
Correct.
You guys have been doing this now for 10 years or so. What's changed in terms of the cartel tactic?
Bringing all these bodies over, I mean, for them, it's 100% profit.
We're seeing more bodies now than we are narcotics in this general area. Before, back in the day, we used to see a lot of narcotics coming across, and it's probably about 50-50.
What's harder to catch, people or narcotics?
Both. They're both hard. They have a lot of scouts along the river, and they'll sit out there on the top of a tree. A lot of the stuff gets through just because all the time in the world to move it. We're limited on the amount of gas that we have. By the time we go back and get refilled, that's the time that they have a big gap to be able to move everything across, you know?
And the manpower, they have the unlimited manpower.
You can see the temporary facility behind me. It's a 100,000 square foot tent meant to give CBP more space to process immigrants. But the burden is also falling on the local government and law enforcement, who say they're running low on resources.
All eyes are on the border.
Border towns like Laredo, Texas face the challenges of the immigration crisis daily. Hundreds, sometimes over 1,000, coming in every day. City Manager Robert Eads says it's straining their resources.
And what we're going to have to do is take resources from our community that I'll have to apply somewhere else. If it's a EMT, fire department, police department, traffic control, whatever it may be, we're going to have to suspend that so we can address this.
In August, the city of Laredo began busing migrants to bigger cities like Austin, Dallas, and Houston, which have more hospital capacity.
Our health system cannot support those volumes. Even if a migrant themselves, God forbid, get sick as well, it's the same resource that we're going to lack. And so they may not get the service they need.
Some of the Haitian migrants who passed through Del Rio in mid-September are still being processed at a temporary facility in Laredo. The soft-sided tent is about 180 miles from where the migrants first crossed the border.
It's important to keep in mind that this is not a detention center. It's not meant for long-term custody. It's not designed to hold criminal aliens, and it is not a jail. It is really a temporary facility just to allow us the space that we need to process the people that we bring in and then move them on to the rest of the process down the line.
The Laredo Police Department's biggest concern when it comes to illegal immigration is human smuggling.
We have stash houses that are popping up everywhere. In one particular house, we had close to, pretty close to 100 people. So, 3 bathrooms for 100 people, it's going to be messy.
The city manager tells me they're asking the federal government for more funding to buy buses and hire additional personnel in preparation of another potential surge. In Laredo, Texas, Ashley Soriano, Fox News.
It took about a week to clear out nearly 15,000 migrants from under a bridge in Del Rio. Human rights advocates criticized the conditions. Border Patrol admitted it was overwhelmed. The Border Patrol union in the Del Rio sector is telling KENS 5 the agents have been busy for months. It suggested to leadership the agency should prepare for what could happen. The union tells our Anastasia Bolton no one listened.
We've been busy all year. The U.S. Border Patrol and its union have talked about the record number of crossings at the Texas-Mexico border all year. Around June or so, we started having more and more people cross, and we started having to mandate agents to work overtime. So based on what the agents in the Del Rio sector were seeing in the field, with the situation, their union and its president, John Anfinson, said they looked ahead at what could be and reached out to their local agency leadership about what they might do under or near the bridge in Del Rio to prepare for possibly even more people. The union actually sat down with the agency and said, look, we need to start setting up some kind of facilities down here. Start small. You bring some laptops or tablets down here, trailers, tents, an RV, just to start the process. Anfinson showed KENS 5 a copy of an email from June 1st with a proposal. And ultimately they said, no, we have other ways of dealing with it. Well, that was in June. Now, were they going to build a gigantic facility in June? No. But if we had at least something down here, it certainly would have helped.
If you compare it to where they were, to what it is now, 100 times better.
In mid-August, about a month before an estimated 15,000 migrants came to the bridge, the Del Rio Station patrol agent in charge showed KENS 5 what the agency had set up.
We brought them water, we brought them porta potties.
Anfinson believes the union's suggestions for a more substantial setup, including additional trailers, tablets, and laptops for processing, could have helped with an estimated 15,000 migrants, mostly from Haiti, who crossed into Del Rio just 3 months after he sent his first email. I'm not saying I was clairvoyant. I'm not saying the union saw this coming, but it absolutely makes sense to start preparations for something on a much larger scale. And unfortunately, they didn't think it was a good idea. And that's fine. It's their call. It took several days to get additional resources brought in to provide enough water, food, and basic facilities to the thousands of migrants under the bridge in Del Rio, and about a week to get people from under it. Based on what's been going on at the border for well over a year, more people are coming. Question is, will the agency that's had a lot of practice do anything differently next time around, or should it? Border Patrol is generally reactive. If it's not a disaster right now, it's probably not going to get a whole lot of attention. In Del Rio with Jose Sanchez, I'm Anastasia Bolton.
Anfinson told KENS 5 he wished his sector had a similar setup as Border Patrol in the Rio Grande Valley. There is a temporary processing site under the Anzalduas Bridge. The processing facility has been criticized by human rights groups, saying the agency can and must do better than people sleeping on the ground. KENS 5 reached out to the Del Rio Border Patrol for comment. We were told to reach out to DHS in D.C. Not clear why, because a union was asking local leadership for changes.
The Department of Homeland Security implementing new guidelines for U.S. immigration officers amid the influx of migrants coming into the country. Under the new rules, solely being undocumented is no longer grounds for deportation. DHS says the agency will instead be shifting its focus toward apprehensions and removing undocumented immigrants who pose a threat to national security. In a statement, Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says those illegally trying to enter the U.S. would be considered a threat and subject to deportation. The guideline will take effect November 29th.
Correspondent Jeff Paul reports tonight from Del Rio, Texas.
When the waters of the Rio Grande are low and the sun is shining bright, that's when they make their move. Troopers clock them as they take their first steps into the river, and a few splashes and a helping hand later, these migrants are in the land of the free.
Freedom. Freedom. That's the word.
Tatiana and her group made the journey from Cuba, leaving everything behind.
Yes, my family, my father, mother, grandfather, my brother. I'm just coming with this.
Just a bag and a few personal items to start a new life in a new country.
Come around. We'll meet you at the gate.
Depending on their situation, many of these migrants are handed over to Border Patrol. They're loaded up and then processed, often given a notice to appear for a later date in court, then released into the U.S. During the Trump administration, agents were able to detain anyone who entered the U.S. illegally. And while a judge just ruled the Biden administration can still expel families due to COVID using Title 42, under a new directive, the act of migrating itself won't be a focus to arrest or deport. The emphasis will be on those who pose a threat to national security or public safety. But after the last massive migrant surge, border towns like Del Rio are bracing for what could be up the road.
Del Rio is a success story for them. Del Rio already looks like the point of entrance again.
However, for migrants like Tatiana, the concern is who they left behind.
My heart's have pain because they don't have anything like this. Food, freedom, nothing.
The mayor here in Del Rio, Texas says they have information that right now 20 to 50,000 migrants are in Mexico looking for a place to cross. Some authorities estimate that number could be as high as 60,000 people, and they could arrive anywhere here along the U.S. Mexico border within weeks. Mike?
Jeff Paul in Del Rio, Texas. Thanks very much.
More reaction today following a change in immigration enforcement policies laid out yesterday by the Biden administration. Ken Molestina joining us now to explain how this will work and why one local immigration attorney believes it may simply be a Band-Aid fix. Ken?
At least for now, that's what he's saying, Brooke. You know, the conversation, by the way, of immigration enforcement in the U.S. lately feels like a bit of a seesaw to you. You're not alone. Policies are changing quickly, and as one local attorney tells me, you can expect this reaction to continue in the absence of full immigration reform.
On Thursday, the Biden administration rolled out a new immigration policy limiting the arrests or deportations of migrants living in the U.S. illegally. Under the new guidance, immigration officials are only to deport those who pose a safety threat to national security or public health.
And it's a departure from the policies that we've seen under the Trump administration when officers were directed to arrest and deport anyone found here in the U.S. without any immigration status.
Nick Chavez is an immigration attorney here in North Texas.
Seemingly, the Biden administration is trying to strike a balance here and please everyone, which is an impossible task, especially with such a highly controversial topic like immigration.
He agrees that constant change in direction when it comes to immigration rules in the U.S. has become hard to follow.
Now it's a case-by-case assessment on whether who gets deported or not. So it's all over the map, and it is confusing.
Border officials, meanwhile, say the constant change in policy will also encourage others to cross into the U.S. illegally and hide out.
A lot of people just figure if I can cross and lay low, the next set of guidance may apply to them. So yeah, I mean the mess that we had under the bridge here in Del Rio, we're hoping not to see that again, but I don't know why we wouldn't.
Del Rio's Border Patrol Union President, John Anfinson, believes the fix is in actual laws signed by Congress, not ever-changing policies from current administrations.
You can't fix this problem just with a simple policy change or guidance or an executive order, because that can just be reversed by the next administration, or they can tweak it however they see fit. Congress, they need to fix this via legislation, because that's the only way it'll actually make a difference.
Well, we should tell you this new policy takes effect in 60 days, and it applies to migrants who entered the U.S. before November 1st of last year, Brooke.
Yeah, certainly the people down here, both with the Texas Department of Public Safety and then also the Border Patrol we've talked to, say that catch and release system is one of the reasons we're just seeing these huge numbers, 200,000 people, the population of Little Rock, Arkansas, every month. It's certainly got to be encouraging to groups, the Haitians, for example, that were let out. They're calling their friends back down in South America. We understand 4,000 more Haitians are on their way. The question, though, is really how much do we know about the people who are coming in? Because it's easy to gloss over and say, oh, 4,000 Haitians, they're here for a better life. Fine. This picture got passed to me by a law enforcement source who says they found somebody near where the Haitians were coming across who was on the FBI terror watch list. It's got to just be dumb luck at some point that you find this person. And at the same time, I'm hearing that for every one person that comes over, 2 or 3 to get through. So are we to believe that 2 or 3 people on the terror watch list got through for this guy having been caught?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, we talk about 200,000 illegal apprehensions in the month of July and August. So if you have that many number of folks being illegally apprehended, you're probably looking at another 50 to 60,000 what we call gotaways. These are individuals that never come into contact with Border Patrol. And so those are the most concerning. We don't know who they are. We don't have the chance to interview them, to biographically look at who they are. And those are the individuals that can really pay the cartels the most amount of money to make sure that they don't cross in a place that is patrolled by Border Patrol. So those are actually the most concerning ones. But I would point back to comments by the chief of the U.S. Border Patrol who recently retired, and he said that there is a national security crisis going on at that border today. It's not just about families, and it's not just about minors seeking refugee or asylum status. This is about criminals. This is about potential terrorists and other very bad actors coming across that border every single day. And I certainly agree with the former chief of the Border Patrol.
Yeah. We certainly saw it, and certainly in terms of the number of dollars involved for the cartels is just incredible. It tells you why they have so much firepower to protect themselves. Great seeing you as always. Thanks for the insight.
All right, thank you.
There's miles worth of wall on the southern border just waiting to be put up. When we come back, why work stopped. Now the troopers and Border Patrol are trying to figure out what they're missing because this group didn't run, they just turned themselves in. But this area is something known for smuggling high-value individuals and drugs and guns and currency. The thought being, put all these people here during shift change so there's a distraction so you can move something far more valuable.
As of now, we have over 6,000 criminal arrests up and down the border in South Texas, West Texas.
Each arrest immigration related. Multiple state agencies continue playing a role in securing our border. Thanks for joining us for Channel 5 News at 6. I'm Dina Herrera Garza.
And I'm Oscar Athame. And we're now learning dozens of migrants arrested in other areas of the state are now being held in a local state jail.
That's where we find Channel 5's Alyssa Cole.
I'm here in Edinburgh outside of the Segovia prison where state officials say they've put dozens of migrants behind bars after they were arrested for trespassing. DPS and Texas military officials are also releasing details about how they helped contain the surge of migrants in Del Rio.
U.S. Border Patrol calls our service commander, Joel Bencourt, our captain in Del Rio, requesting assistance. What was occurring is they had 7,000. They didn't have the manpower to provide outer perimeter security. They were tied up doing processing.
Last week, these images made headlines. Hundreds of DPS troopers, vehicles lined up on both sides of the international bridge in Del Rio. Today, the DPS regional director explained the reasoning behind it, saying it was to form what they call a steel wall to limit migrants from entering into the U.S.
We sent everything we got to address this and to make sure it's a safe environment for all and to prevent anybody from escaping that area.
Victor Escalon also providing an update on Operation Lone Star activity while offering up some of the latest numbers. He says since March, DPS, the Texas military, and Texas Parks and Wildlife have made 6,000 criminal arrests across the border, apprehending over 144,000 migrants and turned them over to Border Patrol. And some of those migrants arrested during the recent criminal activity in Valverde and Kinney counties have been transported and remain here at the Segovia prison in Edinburgh.
Approximately 200.
DPS confirmed that they are aware of migrants moving through Mexico right now heading to the border, but they do not know how many are coming or which part of the border they are traveling to. The Texas military will also be adding an additional 1,500 soldiers to the southern region to help with border protection security and also to help with those continuing efforts of building a border barrier. Alyssa Cole, Channel 5 News at 6.
And a note to Alyssa's story about the state's migrant arrest. A state district judge this week ordered the release of nearly 250 migrants.
The Texas Tribune reports the judge sided with defense attorneys who said the migrant arrest violated state and constitutional rights to due process.
The migrants, set to be released, sat in prison for more than a month without being charged with any crime.
Understandably, our border focus has been mostly on Texas lately, given the massive surge and then release of thousands and thousands of Haitian migrants into the United States. But that does not mean that there aren't huge problems brewing on another part of our southern border, Arizona.
Here we are in the Yuma sector of the Arizona border with Mexico, and we have behind me approximately 75 illegal immigrants from Brazil and Honduras. It is evidence of a failed border policy. It is evidence that the Biden and Harris administration are failing us as Americans, and Arizona is on the front line of this border crisis.
What you're seeing now, that's because the cartels are orchestrating that to tie up Border Patrol resources so they can smuggle in whatever they don't want caught at another location.
Okay, so all the contraband and the drugs will come over as they have now got the agents all concentrated taking care of the people.
Yeah, exactly. It's all orchestrated by the cartels. So for the administration to not secure the border, you're enabling the criminal element to further exploit the weakness in our border right now.
In the system.
By not doing nothing. In October, they had 25 apprehensions here in my county. November, roughly 30. And now they're getting 600 to 700 a day.
600 to 700 a day.
Right. Versus 25 to 35 a day.
Wow. The border is chaos. It's broken. Where is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Our border is a disaster. Behind me are illegal immigrants that were just dropped off less than 5 minutes ago on the Mexico side of the border. And I'm standing in Yuma, Arizona. And here they are crossing into America.
Now, joining me now is a woman you just saw in that video, Karen Taylor Robeson, candidate for governor of Arizona. Karen, everyone's on Texas, Texas, Texas. And again, it makes sense given the enormity of the problem there. But why isn't the Arizona border issue, given what you found and you reported on, getting such scant attention?
Laura, first, thank you for having me on. And to answer your question, I don't know why. But what's happening on the Arizona border, just like in Texas, is a full-scale invasion. We literally went to the border to a spot that's very popular with the crossers, and you saw a portion of it in that video. They literally, a tourist bus literally shows up, drops off the illegal immigrants. They come across the border. We're standing there like the welcoming committee as they came by waving at us, thumbs up, walking straight to the Border Patrol agents to be processed and sent into the United States.
I want people to understand the scope of this, because the Yuma sector of the border has seen these migrant apprehensions surge over 1,000% from August 2020 to August 2021. And Karen, that's only the people they caught. So you have to think of all the people that are just slipping past our thinned out border security, and who knows how many there really are.
That's correct. Just last week alone, you heard the sheriff say they were experiencing 600 to 700 a day. Well, that number is already up to 1,000. And what happens when you saw the 75 immigrants that came from Honduras and from Brazil. What happens is they then aggregate all of the Border Patrol resources managing those people, and then it opens up a wide swath of the border for all the contraband, the drugs, and the people that don't want to do good things in the United States to come across. And so, to your point, we have no idea how many others are coming across the border. So these numbers that we're seeing are just reflecting the apprehensions that we have.
Now, Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has a different view, which might not surprise you, Karen, about the border situation. Watch.
Let me pronounce to my friends that the border is both sovereign and secure. It is obviously subjected to biased and unfair narratives for political purposes.
Karen, are you using the border and you're reporting from the border just for political expediency purposes? That's essentially what she's saying.
Right. Absolutely not. I mean, the American people need to understand what is going on. The cartels in Mexico are organized and they're sophisticated, and people need to know that they are literally delivering people to the border in tour buses, delivering them to walk across our border into the welcoming arms of the United States.
Well, what, Karen, as governor, should you get the nomination and win, what as governor would you do about it that's not being done now?
Well, the first thing we need to do is finish the wall. We need to enforce our laws. And when I'm elected governor, I'm going to surge our National Guard to the border. I'll provide our sheriffs and our local law enforcement along the border the resources they need.
Well, Karen, this is just such a disturbing sight, and you've done more reporting from the Arizona border than a lot of reporters lately, so thank you for that video, and best of luck to you. We'll check back soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Border Patrol agents have foiled another smuggling operation in the El Paso sector after they intercepted a semi-truck carrying 69 migrants. This discovery took place at an immigration checkpoint on I-25 north of Las Cruces. Agents also seized more than $11,000 they found inside the trailer. The migrants were determined to have met the criteria for expulsion under Title 42. The driver of the truck, a U.S. citizen, was arrested and turned over to Homeland Security investigations for prosecution. 2 weeks ago, Border Patrol found 131 migrants inside another semi-truck near Anthony.
Developments happening at the U.S. Mexico border and its impact on us here in South Texas. The Refugio County Sheriff's Department has handled 3 bailouts so far on this day, with a number of the migrants still on the loose on ranch land south of Woodsboro.
Our Michael Gibson has more from Refugio County.
We're here 2 miles south of Woodsboro in Refugio County, just off of Highway 77. The Sheriff's Department says early Friday morning, the driver of an illegal smuggling operation crashed his pickup truck through this ranch fence. Now the property owner is having to make the repairs, while law enforcement is still trying to track down those that committed this bailout. This was one of 3 bailouts taking place in Refugio County on this Friday. Something that is happening on a regular basis now, according to Sheriff Pinky Gonzalez. One county resident blames the federal government for the increase in human smuggling.
Needs to be stopped at the border, for one thing, and any of those that are here illegally, I don't know what they're going to do with them once they're here, but really some kind of control needs to be set forth and followed through.
Another longtime resident says that there has to be a better plan to deal with the increase in migrants trying to illegally enter the country.
They should protect our borders, but at the same time, try to go help these people at the countries where they're coming from.
Authorities did search the ranch for a number of hours before finally pulling back and setting up along Highway 77 in the hopes that they might be able to spot that truck leaving the ranch. The ranch owner tells me he's going to continue to stay out here and try to locate that illegal smuggling operation that crashed through his fence. Now, he says he has checked the fence perimeter and sees no signs that the truck has crashed through another part of the ranch to head out of here. So he feels they're still somewhere on his ranch and may be waiting for nightfall before they make their move to head back out onto Highway 77. From Refugio County, Michael Gibson, 3 News.
A woman accused of working for a human smuggling ring is facing federal charges after the feds say the operation turned deadly. Federal investigators say Lydia Marcos Tomas was driving 12 undocumented migrants from Albuquerque to Mesa, Arizona, when she got into a crash near Gallup last month. One woman in that car was killed. Investigators say it turns out Marcos Tomas was also not supposed to be in the U.S. Border Patrol records show the Guatemalan national took off her GPS monitor while her immigration case was pending back in 2018 and then disappeared. According to court documents, Marcos Tomas told investigators her bosses are from Mexico, and this is the third time she has smuggled a group of immigrants.
Live breaking news from News Channel 3.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Butita. Thanks for joining us here on News Channel 3 Midday. We do begin with that breaking news. A smuggling boat and its people intercepted along the sand near Refugio State Beach. And News Channel 3 senior reporter John Palmentary at that scene with what we know right now. John?
This is an area just past Refugio known as Arroyo Quemada. And behind me, there are 15 suspects that have been captured by the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department. There are narcotics officers. The California Highway Patrol was here. State Parks was actively involved. U.S. Border Patrol is here as well, and U.S. Coast Guard. All of the suspects cooperated once they were contacted by the law enforcement who pinned them down in this cove here just past Refugio State Beach. They were taken into custody, given water, blankets, and checked medically. 3 of them did need some medical care. And earlier today, this started about 8 o'clock this morning when there was a report of a possible smuggling boat coming up the coastline past Ventura County into Santa Barbara County. And the Sheriff's Department deployed units in the area of Carpinteria, Montecito, the Miramar Beach, Hammonds, Butterfly Beach, Santa Barbara Harbor, Goleta Beach, and eventually came to this location, which has been a frequent drop spot for smuggling boats, either human smuggling or drug smuggling. And in this case, it was both. The suspects got out of the water, started running up and down the beach, were pinned down and taken into custody, brought up to the top of the road line here. Trains were stopped, and then a diver from State Parks, a swimmer, went into the water to pick up 2 backpacks that we just saw a moment ago, and we'll have tonight on News Channel 3. The evidence of the drugs that were being smuggled would appear to be heroin and meth, and 2 big black backpacks loaded with them, wrapped in plastic bags, and they were wrapped within that. So this all went down about 9 to 10 o'clock this morning after that first call out around 8 o'clock with a full deployment of law enforcement along the coastline until they found out where the boat came ashore. Now the U.S. Coast Guard is just in the waters here as the boat is in the sand, and they're going to be towing that out of here. There was some fuel in the water as well, and they're going to be doing an environmental assessment of that. Maybe Patriot will come out here and do the cleanup, and they're going to take that boat in as well. Again, 15 people taken into custody, 2 backpacks loaded with drugs, and a full deployment of law enforcement, again, from the Sheriff's Department and their narcotics unit, their K-9, the Coast Guard with their air ops as well as their boat. The California Highway Patrol was here, and of course State Parks was actively involved in this as well earlier this morning. We'll have a full report coming up tonight at 5 and 6. Reporting live on the scene of this big drug and human smuggling arrest, I'm John Palmentary, News Channel 3.
New at 6, United States Border Patrol agents came across a boat that was carrying 16 Cubans in the Florida Keys. The migrants arrived on Boca Chica, and that's where Border Patrol agents took them into custody. Border Patrol said they arrived on a homemade raft after being at sea for 3 days. Just yesterday, 10 more Cubans were detained after reaching Marathon.
Well, a new high-tech type of camera is helping Border Patrol agents adapt to different methods used by migrants. Roxanne Van Rooten has the latest.
Probably right across there is where they cross.
Yeah, we can see them there.
See the white ridge line?
Years ago, Border Patrol agents had to take turns monitoring an area with binoculars in over 100-degree heat. But now a new technology called the Autonomous Surveillance Tower is changing the game and helping Border Patrol agents even off the clock.
This will actually have the ability to have one agent who can monitor about 4 cameras.
The self-scanning cameras have a radius about 3 miles and are constantly moving in all directions.
When it detects movement, it's able to zoom in on it and detect what kind of movement it is, whether it's human, it's vehicle, or it's animal.
Which they say allows for more agents out on the field and can immediately send someone over to investigate an area.
No matter how advanced technology gets, you're always going to need that human element.
But he adds it's also good for the environment.
As you can see, nothing is set in stone. There's no electric lines running to it. It runs on its own. If we see that there's not enough traffic in this area, we need to move it to another hill or another location. Within a few hours, we can have it up and running.
The camera's solar panels allows 1 hour of sunlight to power the cameras for up to 24 hours, which works perfectly for the Sun City. But they say they do have other options, like the long-range thermal cameras that are mounted on trucks for faster access.
Say, for example, with these, anywhere that a pickup truck can go, that truck can go.
Bottom line, they say they are grateful for the new technology.
We have a mission, which is securing our nation's borders. We take it very seriously, and any tool that the government is able to provide to make that job easier and safer for the agents, we're going to take advantage of it.
Roxanne Mamberton, KTSM 9 News.
All right, Roxanne, thank you for that. And as of right now, there are only 2 of these cameras in El Paso Border Patrol. The Border Patrol told KTSM they plan on installing a total of 15 cameras throughout the El Paso sector.
Conservatives are fuming over the president's latest move on immigration. The Department of Homeland Security issued new rules on deportation, saying being in the country illegally should not be the sole basis for being sent home. All this comes as a new caravan makes its way north, and the immigration braces for 400,000 migrants coming to the southern border. Republicans are calling the president out.
We have a border crisis. There has been over 1.5 million illegal border crossings so far under President Biden. Small towns at our southern border are overwhelmed by migrants.
March was the largest month on record for illegal crossings until April. April was the largest month until May, May until June, June until July, when 212,000 illegal migrants encounters on our border. This is a complete disaster, but it's all at the feet of Joe Biden and his administration.
Now, David, this new rule, which was like the zero tolerance when it comes to how ICE sort of deports folks, was created under the Trump administration, and it's got a lot of folks caught up. One individual in particular was a 7-year Army vet who served this country, who was deported. So there's reasons for some people to say this is a good rule or it's a bad rule, but oftentimes there are people who get caught up in the melee that served this country, like this particular individual who was here, who served for 7 years and then got deported back to Mexico, and now trying to get his way back in the country after serving in our armed forces. So how do we sort of bridge the gap between yes and no, right? Because the answer is someplace probably in the middle.
Well, this directive is beyond just one individual. It includes, here it says, it argues against deporting an illegal immigrant who has committed a crime. Say if you're of a tender age or an advanced age, it goes on. If you're in this country illegally, by that very word, you've broken the law, number one. And there's great pressure now being put on the Biden administration from the far left because they actually deported some of the Haitians that came into this country. And now they're upset, people camping out in front of Alejandro Mayorkas's house with anyone being deported. But let's say, okay, how about let's start caring about the fentanyl that's crossing the border. Our resources are being sucked up by hundreds of thousands of people coming into the country. And you've got, well, we talked about it yesterday, 93,000 people died from fentanyl poisonings. How about the left starts caring about the loved ones and the families and the dead because our border isn't being protected? And just one more thing on this. This will only, and Jesse, everybody can weigh in, this will only make this crisis worse when they're planning on 400,000 people hitting the border this month.
Jesse, your take?
I think you and I are going to agree on something, Richard.
Whoa.
All right?
Cameras are on?
Because you can't disagree with this. If you know that in June, the Panamanians tipped off Sleepy and said, hey, we got about 10,000 strong caravan of Haitians coming up through Panama into Central America, into your country, and they didn't do anything about it. And then in October, late September, they tell you, you know what? It's going to go to about 400,000 strong caravan coming up. Now, we're a sophisticated country, Richard. We have satellite technology. We have station chiefs all over that region. We have diplomats. How long do you think it takes to get from Colombia all the way to the Rio Grande? Probably a couple months, right?
5 months.
So you're seeing it happen in real time. So Joe has what? Maybe several months warning? You got 400,000 migrants? Okay. Do you think Joe Biden could do anything at all, Richard, to stop or even slow down 400,000 migrants coming from South America to North America? Do you think he has anything, in his tool chest to figure that out?
No, actually.
Okay, so you agree. You agree. Now, my next question, Do you think he will do anything about that?
I think he should.
You think he should? I think he should, but I don't think he will. And that's why the president is in over his head.
So will you yield for a question?
Because he will not do anything about this.
So will you yield for a question? So I will give you that. Will you then say that we have 11 million folks in this country living in the shadows?
Probably 20 million. They've been using 11 million since I was in diapers.
Fair enough. Should we do something about them, or should we just deport all of them?
No, I'd take out the criminals best I could. You know, the hardcore ones.
And then what should we do?
It's very difficult to get the ones that haven't committed a crime. Very difficult. But I'd get everybody else out.
And then what should we do?
I'd deport them.
All 11 million, or just the criminals?
I'd get all the nasty ones out.
And then
I'd get them out fast.
What should we do with the other ones?
Wait, what do you mean? Just the criminals?
What should I do with the other ones? I don't think I'd put them on a pathway.
Okay.
I don't think I would.
I actually agree that I think citizenship is sacred, but I don't think we have proper legal means to deal with people here who are working hard, paying taxes, and raising families. And as for the people who've made their way from Colombia through Panama, there's a 65-mile stretch called the Darien Gap, which is so incredibly treacherous, and they all have to go through it. There are Black Panthers. There are pit vipers. There are scorpions. There are massive swaths of jungle. So if people are literally going to put themselves in death's clutches to get to the United States, they're probably going to be some pretty badass people. So we need to have better means of figuring out good people from bad people. The federal government, to your point at the top of the show, has been really, really bad at doing that. Every administration, Republican, Democrat, they don't want to deal with immigration. Congress doesn't want to deal with immigration. They don't want to figure out the laws that are stupid and redundant from the ones that might be helpful, getting people in who want to work hard and make this country better. I'm sure we all have people in our family who came here from a different place with a big fat dream. I still think there are a lot of people like that, but I think the government has failed them utterly every step of the way, especially this administration, and shame on them for not actually doing something about it when they have the majority in Congress as well.
Dan, your turn.
This is only one of those conversations that happens amongst liberals who are generally like clueless, nonsensical dopes a lot. Like, this is a serious conversation on, not a present company soon, but this is, of course, a conversation on the left. Like, should being in the country illegally be the only reason we deport people for being in the country illegally? You're like, let's change the topic for a minute to make this make sense to liberals, because they're generally dunces. Should we arrest people for crack, and the only reason being we arrest them for crack because they smoke crack? And you're like, this is a crime. Do you understand? Like, you want to deport people for illegal immigration, and you're wondering if that's the only reason to deport them? Are you again like, am I crazy?
We go into other countries. You can't just stay in other countries.
So wait,
anyway, gents.
Wait. The DHS is seriously suggesting you can't deport people.
To extra depth and perspective. An 8-mile stretch of border is among the busiest and most heavily trafficked areas for undocumented immigrants in the Southwest. Sunland Park, New Mexico, and Anapra, Mexico are at the heart of this area. ABC 7's Mauricio Casillas and director John McMinn set out to document how these communities have dealt with a historic surge in border crossings this summer.
Officer Edwin Gallardo patrols the city where he was born and raised.
We kind of have to pick and choose how much we can help them.
The 5-year veteran tells me this summer's spike in border crossings has made his job harder. We rode along with him 3 separate days this summer. This is day 1.
Sometimes we get calls back to back to back for the same situation. It's happened where a group of migrants, they get scared, so they split. And we're talking about 20s and 30s. So you have 30 calls, 30 neighbors calling in at the same time. Hey, I need some help.
The police department cannot get involved in migrant-related calls unless there's a municipal law that's being broken. Officer Gallardo says most of their interventions are due to trespassing.
We have to outweigh sometimes our response. It could be a distressful grandmother. There's subjects in her property to a motor vehicle crash.
One of the most difficult things for officers is that the migrants can go from trespassing in neighborhoods like this one to hiding in thick brush like this, where it's very difficult to spot them.
Another day, on patrol with Officer Gallardo, we spot a man running in the distance. When we catch up,
I was the BP on an upper road.
3 undocumented migrants apprehended just a few yards from a home.
¿Qué tal el viaje? Pesado.
Officer Gallardo asks this migrant how his journey has been.
¿Dónde nos visitan? Ecuador.
After making sure the agent has backup, we get back in the police unit
144 Central.
and promptly encounter this.
They are loaded. See, look how close to the school bus.
As high schoolers are getting picked up on the other side of the street, more than a dozen migrants are detained.
How close is that? They get into that bus, just waiting for a catastrophe to happen.
Officer Gallardo's job is to protect Sunland Park, but he understands the struggle these migrants go through. He tells us about a conversation he had with this woman.
She was broken down. The only thing she said was, "I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna come over and make my dream." And she just broke down crying.
The people who live on the other side of this wall, in the sun-baked hills of Anapra, have a front row seat to the challenges on the border. Seeing a migrant climb up this barrier or hearing a Border Patrol helicopter hover above them is nothing new. It's a part of their daily lives. We wanted to get the perspective of those who also have migrants traveling through their neighborhoods south of the border.
Lo triple, si se pudiera decir. Sí, mucho.
Triple, you could say. That's what this woman, who lives just a few yards away from the border fence, told me when I asked her about the number of migrants she's seen cross over this summer.
Pues yo lo miro como nosotros, como cualquier otra persona.
She says she sees migrants as one of their own. She's not bothered by them crossing through her neighborhood. Some were climbing and jumping over. Even some have fallen. That's what Juan Rodriguez tells me he often sees. His home, just a few feet away from the border wall. They're fighting because maybe in the U.S. they can make more money, Rodriguez tells me. He's not concerned with migrants coming through his property. Back in Sunland Park, moments after we had started another ride-along with Officer Gallardo, he responds to a trespassing call at this business. He assists Border Patrol with their pursuit.
See, he took a full-on sprint right here.
We follow him as he searches different spots.
If you look down there, you'll see clothes and bottles and whatnot.
And as we round the corner, Officer Gallardo learns the Border Patrol has apprehended the migrants.
We're both gonna break off because there's not people wanting to report some stuff at the station. So that's what I mean about we help them as much as we could.
Another day, as we're in the neighborhood closest to the border, we see this.
They call us, people are coming out through the window. We come out and we stumble into this.
An empty property converted into a stash house.
Once they make it into the streets, they made it into the residential area. That's where you'll start seeing these fences taken down.
Clothing articles on that end.
There's another impact the Migrant Surge has had on the community. Border Patrol agent Carlos Rivera told me of a troubling trend.
Unfortunately, we've seen an uptick in teenage drivers, teenage facilitators recruited by the criminal organizations, recruiting from the Sunland Park area. So that's why our relationship is a strong relationship with Sunland Park PD.
Collaboration is key. With homes walking distance from the border wall, Sunland Park police officers face some of the most unique challenges in the country. But Officer Gallardo wouldn't want it any other way.
The stress level can be high, but ultimately this is what we signed up for. This is what we love to do, and this is a calling.
Gallardo says his calling is to help humans, no matter who they are or where they're from. He will be here, taking care of the community he loves. Mauricio Casillas, ABC7.
For more perspective, take a look at this map. It shows the El Paso Border Patrol sector, which includes part of West Texas and all of New Mexico. And this stretch right here is the Santa Teresa Border Patrol area of responsibility. It extends from Sunland Park to the Columbus, New Mexico port of entry, about 65 miles of border. In this fiscal year, agents have encountered more than 81,000 migrants, the vast majority coming through Sunland Park. The city's population is just more than 17,000.